Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The truth detonates across Genoa City like a thunderclap the moment the doors burst open and the room freezes in a tableau of blood, breath, and betrayal because the shooter, finally unmasked, steps forward from the shadows with trembling hands and tear-streaked resolve. And it is Victoria Newman who fired the gun, Victoria who pulled the trigger not out of hatred for Nick but out of a desperate, bone-deep terror that Matt would die and take half the city's darkest secrets with him. Victoria who had been watching from the corridor as the confrontation escalated, hearing Nick's voice sharpen into something she'd never heard before, a fury sharpened by grief and years of being manipulated by Matt's lies. Victoria who saw Nick raise the weapon and realized that in that split second everything, her family, the company, the fragile order holding Genoa City together, was about to shatter beyond repair, and so she acted, not thinking, not calculating, only reacting with the instinct of a sister who loved Nick fiercely and a strategist who understood the catastrophic consequences if Matt's death exposed the deals, the hush money, the leverage that could drag Newman Enterprises into oblivion. The gunshot rings out and time fractures, Nick collapsing as blood blooms across his shirt while the scream that tears through the room seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, Sharon rushing forward, Victor roaring his son's name, Nikki staggering as if struck herself, and Matt, alive, shaking, horrified, realizing in an instant that he has just become the most dangerous man in the room, because Victoria's eyes lock on his with a warning colder than steel. Live or we all die. The revelation spills outward in waves as security floods in, sirens wail, and the whispers begin to coil through the city like smoke, because no one can reconcile the ironclad CEO with the woman who just shot her own brother. And yet the pieces click into place with brutal clarity. Victoria's late-night meetings, the burner phone discovered too late, the unexplained payments masked as consulting fees, the way she always seemed one step ahead of the fallout, each clue now a confession written in hindsight. At the hospital, under blinding lights and relentless beeps, Nick fights for his life while the family fractures at his bedside, Victor demanding answers and receiving a stare that does not flinch, Nikki dissolving into sobs as Victoria finally breaks and whispers the truth she's been carrying like a blade against her ribs, confessing that Matt had threatened to expose a chain of events that would ruin them all, that he had evidence tying past cover-ups to present crimes, that he promised to burn Genoa City to the ground if anyone crossed him, and when Nick aimed to end it, Victoria chose the unforgivable to prevent the irreversible. Sharon's fury ignites like a storm as she realizes the man she loves was sacrificed to protect a lie, while Adam, smiling that dangerous, knowing smile, sees an opportunity blooming in the blood-soaked aftermath, because if Victoria falls, the board shifts, and if Matt lives, the leverage multiplies. Matt, meanwhile, spirals into paranoia as the city closes in, haunted by the echo of the gunshot and the certainty that Victoria's mercy is conditional, that the same hand that saved him could silence him just as quickly if he becomes a liability, and so he begins to maneuver, planting stories, feeding half-truths to the press, painting himself as a victim caught between warring Newmans, while quietly arranging his escape routes, unaware that someone else has already begun to pull the thread that will unravel him. The police circle closer, questions sharpen, and Victoria's public composure cracks under the weight of private guilt as she stands before the board and delivers a flawless performance, steering the company through the storm while the city debates whether she is a monster or a martyr, a villain or a protector, because Genoa City loves nothing more than a woman who can wear power like armor and bleed in silence. As Nick finally opens his eyes, the room holds its breath, and the look he gives Victoria is not rage but a devastation that cuts deeper than any accusation, a silent reckoning that says he understands why she did it and will never forgive it, and in that gaze, the family's future fractures into 1,000 possible endings. Secrets refuse to stay buried. An anonymous drop leaks. Surveillance footage placing Victoria at the scene. Another tip reveals Matt's hidden files, and the city braces for impact as alliances shift overnight, lovers turn adversaries, and loyalty becomes a currency spent too freely. In the final, chilling beat of the revelation, Victoria stands alone in her office after midnight, the city glowing beneath her like a field of embers, clutching the gun she hasn't yet turned in, realizing that saving Matt cost her everything she thought she was protecting, because Nick survived, yes, but trust did not, and as footsteps approach and the door creaks open, she lifts her chin, ready to face the consequences of a choice that will define Genoa City for years to come. because the shock is not just who pulled the trigger, but the truth that in this city, love can be lethal, salvation can be a sin, and sometimes the person who saves the villain becomes the most dangerous force of all. The aftermath of the gunshot does not settle into silence but metastasizes into a living, breathing nightmare that spreads through Genoa City hour by hour, because Nick's survival does not bring relief, it brings consequences, and with every labored breath he takes in that hospital bed, the weight of Victoria's decision grows heavier, more corrosive, until it poisons every relationship it touches. The doctors speak in careful tones about recovery and rehabilitation, about the possibility of permanent damage, and those words echo in Nikki's mind like a verdict, because she knows that even if Nick walks again, nothing will ever return to what it was, not after a Newman shot a Newman to save a man who should have been stopped long ago. Victor prowls the corridors like a caged animal, his fury sharpened by the unbearable irony that the family enemy wasn't an outsider but his own daughter. And yet beneath the rage simmers a darker understanding, that Victoria did exactly what he himself has done 1,000 times before, sacrificing one piece of the family to protect the empire, and that realization terrifies him more than the blood on Nick's shirt ever could. Sharon refuses to leave Nick's side, her grief crystallizing into a cold, unwavering resolve, because she understands now that love in Genoa City is always collateral damage, and she quietly begins to collect answers, replaying conversations, tracing inconsistencies, feeling the shape of a truth that Victoria still hasn't fully confessed. Adam, meanwhile, wastes no time turning chaos into leverage, whispering to board members, feeding doubt into the cracks of loyalty, framing Victoria not as a tragic protector but as a liability whose personal choices have endangered the company. And as the stock trembles and investors circle, the question shifts from why she did it to how long can she survive it. Matt senses the shift instantly, the ground beneath him no longer solid but riddled with sinkholes, because saving his life has made him invaluable and expendable at the same time, a paradox that gnaws at his sanity, and he begins to drink more, sleep less, hearing phantom sirens in the dead of night, knowing that Victoria's protection is not born of trust but fear, and fear is the weakest currency of all. When the police finally return with sharper questions and colder eyes, Victoria delivers half-truths with surgical precision, admitting presence without intent, chaos without calculation, painting the shooting as a tragic accident born of confusion, while carefully omitting the part where Matt's threats still hang like a guillotine over the city, and the detectives pause, just a second too long, tells her they don't believe her, not entirely. Nikki confronts her daughter in the quiet of the family ranch, the words raw and shaking, demanding to know how far this goes, how many lines Victoria has crossed that Nikki never saw, and Victoria finally breaks, confessing that Matt has files hidden across 3 countries, files that tie corporate fraud to political bribery, files that could send Victor to prison and leave the Newman name in ashes, and Nikki realizes with horror that the gunshot was not the beginning of the nightmare but its continuation. Nick awakens to a city that feels unfamiliar, his body weaker but his mind razor-sharp, and when Victoria comes to see him, the air between them thickens with everything unsaid, because he remembers her face in the moment before the shot, remembers the certainty in her eyes, and he asks the question that terrifies her most, not why did you shoot me, but what did Matt threaten you with, and in that instant she knows the lie is cracking, because Nick has always been the family's conscience, and consciences have a way of refusing to stay silent. Sharon overhears fragments of this exchange, and the puzzle locks into place with devastating clarity, igniting a fire in her that will not be extinguished, because she understands now that Matt is not just dangerous. He is the linchpin holding the city hostage, and she begins to plan, quietly, methodically, determined to expose him even if it means destroying what's left of the Newmans. The press pounces, headlines screaming betrayal and blood, speculating wildly about motives, affairs, conspiracies, while Genoa City chooses sides with vicious enthusiasm, and Victoria becomes both symbol and scapegoat, hailed by some as a ruthless protector and condemned by others as a heartless sister who chose power over blood. Adam escalates, leaking just enough to force a special board review, and as Victoria stands before the men and women who once feared her, she feels the shift in the room, the subtle recalibration of power, because fear has turned to doubt, and doubt is fatal. Matt, sensing his shield weakening, makes his boldest move yet, reaching out to an unexpected ally, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain, offering the truth in exchange for protection. unaware that the person he contacts has already sworn to bring him down. Victor, cornered and furious, confronts Matt privately, the two titans circling each other in a standoff thick with history and mutual contempt, and when Matt smiles and says Nick's blood is on Victor's hands too, something dark and irrevocable hardens in Victor's eyes, because he realizes that Matt is not just a threat to the family, he is a virus that must be eradicated. As night falls, Genoa City hums with secrets in motion, files copied, phones tapped, alliances rewritten, and Victoria stands alone once more, staring at the city lights, haunted by the knowledge that saving Matt did not stop the destruction, it delayed it, and delay, she now understands, only makes the explosion larger. In the final moments of this chapter, Nick secretly asks Sharon to do what he cannot yet do himself, find the truth no matter the cost. And Sharon agrees, knowing that once this truth comes out, there will be no winners, only survivors, because the real shock is no longer who pulled the trigger, but the realization that the bullet only started a chain reaction that will tear Genoa City apart from the inside. And somewhere in the darkness, Matt smiles, convinced he still holds the upper hand, unaware that the lie protecting him has begun to suffocate its creators. The end does not arrive quietly. It arrives screaming, dragging every lie into the light and setting Genoa City ablaze with a truth so brutal that no one escapes unscarred. Because once Sharon begins pulling threads, the entire tapestry unravels faster than anyone anticipates, and the revelation Victoria feared most comes crashing down not as a single confession but as a cascading exposure that leaves nowhere left to hide. Sharon finds the first crack in Matt's armor buried inside an encrypted drive disguised as a music file, proof of blackmail so vast it rewrites the city's recent history. Payments, recordings, contracts signed in bloodless ink that condemn powerful men and women alike. And when Nick sees it from his hospital bed, pale and shaking, he understands with devastating clarity that Victoria did not just shoot him to save Matt, she shot him to save a system built on rot, a system their father perfected and their sister inherited. And that realization hardens into resolve. Sharper than pain, Adam strikes next, not out of morality but opportunity, leaking fragments to the press that ignite a firestorm, forcing the police to act publicly and aggressively. Because once corruption is headline news, justice becomes unavoidable, and suddenly warrants fly, offices are raided, and the walls begin closing in on Matt from every direction. Victoria watches it unfold with a hollow calm, knowing this moment was always coming, knowing she crossed the line not because she believed Matt deserved saving but because she believed the truth would destroy everything. And now the truth is here anyway, demanding payment with interest. Matt panics, his bravado collapsing into desperation as allies vanish and phones go unanswered. And when he finally confronts Victoria, accusing her of betrayal, her response is cold and final, because she understands now that saving him was her greatest mistake, and she refuses to make it twice. The standoff ends with sirens, guns drawn, and Matt dragged away screaming about shared guilt and buried sins, but his threats land hollow because the city has already chosen. The monster exposed is no longer the one they fear most. Nick, discharged against medical advice, faces his family in a reckoning that strips every relationship bare, telling Victoria that he forgives her not because she deserves it but because hatred would finish what the bullet started, and that forgiveness, quiet, devastating, breaks her more completely than condemnation ever could. Victor, finally cornered, delivers a confession cloaked in defiance, admitting to manipulating systems and people alike while insisting he did it for family, for legacy, for survival. And in that moment Nikki sees him clearly for the first time, not as a protector, but as the architect of generations of damage. Arrests follow, resignations cascade, the Newman name fractures under the weight of its own mythology, and Genoa City watches in stunned silence as titans fall. And the illusion of invincibility dies in real time. Victoria steps down, not as a surrender but as an acknowledgement that power without conscience is just another weapon, and as she walks away from the empire she bled for, she carries the knowledge that saving Matt cost her everything, and that losing everything was the only way to finally stop the cycle. In the final haunting moments, Nick stands alone at the edge of the city as dawn breaks, the scar on his chest a permanent reminder that love and betrayal often wear the same face, while Sharon joins him hand in hand, knowing survival is not victory but responsibility. Because Genoa City will rebuild, it always does, but it will never forget the night a sister pulled the trigger. A lie collapsed, and the truth proved deadlier than any bullet fired.